After lightning over George Steinbrenner Field lasted nearly 2 hours, the Yankees brought the thunder with 9 home runs and bashed the Rays on their way to victory. A much needed win over a divisional opponent sets the stage for tonight in what some could say might be a punt game. But at this point of the season, you hope no game is a punt game because every game is right in front of you. And right in front of the New York Yankees stands a massive rivalry weekend with the Boston Red Sox. Among those topics, we'll also talk about a specific article that has Major League Baseball and some comments from Rob Manfred that has Major League Baseball and its fan base in complete disarray right now. But before we get into any of that on today's episode of Bomber Boys, first, thank you guys for hanging with us here on Bomber Boys. Second, to my fellow Bomber Boy, Justin Chevalella. How are you today, man?
I can't complain. I'm in a pretty good mood. I've been sitting around watching the Little League World Series all day. I don't know how much you've gotten to watch it, considering I'm on vacation and you have a real job, but it's been some fun games. The Connecticut Nevada game going on right now. The Metro seemingly going to win that one. It's been a fun couple of weeks watching that, but all around in a good mood. I almost just don't want to talk about the Yankees because they've won 6 of their last 7 games. They've only lost 1 game since we last talked. It's like maybe us not talking was the thing that got them going, obviously. So maybe we should just end it or talk somewhere else. I know college football starts this week. Plenty of other topics if we want to try to keep the Yankees hot. But in all seriousness, should be a fun one. A lot to talk about. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We are heading into college football season. NFL's on the horizon. Yankees have been winning games. Feels like everything is coming up roses right now. Yet somehow, some way, Justin and I will find little things to nitpick over the course of the next hour or so. So, on today's episode, mentioned we're going to talk about a number of things, but feels like the first place to start, even though everybody's looking ahead to the weekend, is what's going on in Tampa Bay this weekend. The New York Yankees visiting George Steinbrenner Field this week, rather, ahead of a monster weekend on the horizon. But last night, getting a much needed kind of, I said this off air, but I'll use the term on air because we're not on com radio anymore and I can curse. It was the kind of belt to ass victory you really need at this point in the season, just to get guys that maybe even aren't in their mojo back in their mojo and get guys who already are raking just those couple extra nice performances ahead of a big weekend to continue the mojo. It's one of those performances that could uplift some guys, but also just continue the ride up in a time you need it most. Coming out of a big weekend series with St. Louis as well, what have you made of this last stretch that, as you mentioned, has been red hot for the Yankees at a time they needed it most?
Well, I think we should maybe pat ourselves on the back based off our conversation from last week about saying eventually everything's going to have to even itself back out. It was clear as day, even when we were panicking about everything about the Yankees, it was clear as day that this team was a better team than what they were playing as. In the last couple of series, starting with that Twins series, then St. Louis, and the start of this Rays one, albeit just a 2-game series, it's showing just that, right? You look all around between the team winning 6 of the last 7 and you think about different guys starting to get going. Ben Rice's stats have started to even out, right, to exactly what the expectation would be given his hard hit velocity and his bad luck all year, all that type of stuff. He's starting to even out. Carlos Rodon, after a little bit of a tough stretch, he's evened out. The pitching staff in general, outside of Max Fried, which could still be a panic point for this Yankees right now, but outside of Max Fried, the starting pitchers are starting to give some more length out of them, even fighting through like Rodon did last week and what he did, or not last week, last night, and what he did last week too, when he kind of, you know, battled through. Same thing with Cam Schlittler and Will Warren. I mean, you can keep naming guys and Luis Heel coming back. Everything is starting to go exactly as you'd expect for a team with, all these former MVPs, guys that have been in the Cy Young races before, former reliever, like close to reliever of the year candidates, all stars. This is what you expected the Yankees to be. This, from April and May, how hot they were, that's what you figured this team could be. Sure, slow down in June, July, and early August and panicking, and rightfully so, because if they didn't right the ship, well, then you're talking about a totally different story right now. But this is a team that everything is starting to go its way. A good baseball team finds that rhythm yet again, and this is a perfect time to do it. Like you said, these 2 games against Tampa Bay, the 4 games against Boston. Eventually, you're going to see Baltimore, and you're going to see Toronto again, and you're going to see Boston for another series. This is exactly what you need. And I think, just going with recency bias with last night's game, that's what, those 9 home runs. Sure, it's easy to say that's the team that we saw in the beginning of the year because that first series against, Milwaukee, they also hit 9 home runs in a game. But, that's the type of stuff you expect. And it's a game like that we had said off air before we went, started recording. That's what you were waiting for these Yankees. That's that signature win, in a sense, that should put this team on a good track for the rest of the season. Wins against Minnesota, great. Wins against St. Louis, even better, team over 500. You win like you did last night, at George M. Steinbrenner Field, the way Hal's team performed last night, that's a team that is going on the right track. You obviously hope that it continues tonight, but when you can slug your way to victory, Rodon pitches through his struggles, and everything goes your way for a game that got rained out for 2 hours, and then you start late, and everything that happened last night, that's a win, a team win that has me excited for, this rest of August as well as September.
Rodon goes 6 innings last night with 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 Ks, and 5 hits allowed. In his last 7 outings, a 3.07 ERA with a 4-1 record, and he's pitched 41 innings over that 7-game span. He has been exceptional. He's been that kind of reliable arm, and it's definitely been a welcome sight. You talk about another guy here who, didn't go the distance in his last outing, but fought tooth and nails in a big way. Will Warren has looked pretty solid in recent outings, and really another guy that in his last 7 outings, a 3.16 ERA. We've mentioned him on this show, a guy who they've held the faith on, and it started to kind of reward them. And you can go throughout the course of this rotation. You can go throughout the course outside of Max Fried in the rotation, but you can go through the course of the bullpen to some guys getting back in the swing of things. And you can also pinpoint guys that are on the horizon. Ryan Yarbrough is on the horizon, set to come back. Fernando Cruz set to come back. Apparently, according to Aaron Boone, all 3 of these guys in the same state throw Johnny Lasagna into the mix as well with the other 2. And you've got 3 guys who are maybe not all going to come back at the same time, but you've got 3 guys who will provide some semblance of reinforcements on the way. You kind of made a face there with Jonathan Loaisiga. I'm assuming you just don't really necessarily see him playing a big role at this point with this team this year.
Well, there's that, but I also think you missed the report where he was going for extra imaging, is what Boone said yesterday. It seems like he is delayed, he is sore, and it seemed like he was going to get checked out again. So it's not as likely that Loaisiga comes back as soon as Yarborough or as soon as Cruz, those guys. It seems like Loaisiga, I saw a tweet that said it could have been, we could have seen Johnny Loaisiga in pinstripes for the final time, right? Depending on how this comes back.
That was the thought originally when he went down, because it felt like it's just been a litany of injuries for him.
And he hasn't been effective. He hasn't been effective even when he is there. That's what I mean. The face was for 2 reasons, because even if he comes back, which guy are you taking out of this bullpen right now is my question, right? You can look at certain guys and be like, Camilo Doval, he's got options. He hasn't been great, but at the same time, would you really take him out? The only way to get Devin Williams off the team is to DFA him. You're not going to DFA a guy that you traded away Nestor Cortez and Caleb Durbin for. There's not really a spot for Loaisiga, especially with Cruz coming back. I know Brent Hedrick went on the IL yesterday. The corresponding move hasn't been made just yet. So it's really, 2 guys, maybe 3, depending on what the Yankees see in Yarborough, whether that be the bullpen or whether that be a longer, leash out of the, starting rotation and, Cam Schlittler gets shut down or sent down, whatever the case is. You have 3 or 2 guys fighting for realistically 1 spot in that bullpen. So, I mean, I didn't really see a spot for Loaisiga, but I also think the injury or potentially another bigger problem with his arm is really going to limit him from pitching this season if we even see him at all this season.
Glad to see this happen right after I listened to him get a semi-decent review from Aaron Boone on Talking Yanks, and also say that Ryan Yarbrough expected to be the long man-ish kind of there as a starting option. He did not tip his hand, just put it bluntly, in any way, shape, or form whatsoever in what way they plan to use Yarbrough. But
well, that's good, because with how Aaron Boone's day went yesterday, it seems like he was just going to say the wrong thing anyway.
Well, we'll get to him in a second. Easy, dog. Easy. Down. Relax for a second. But when it comes to Yarborough, I think that's a guy who he gives them that versatility, kind of not on the same level of a Luke Weaver from seasons ago, but when he first made his emergence with the Yankees that September, but somebody who could make a big impact in the run because he can get you some innings. And then Fernando Cruz hasn't exactly looked great in his rehab assignments, but he's also kind of easing his way back into everything. But the two of them figure to be reinforcements whenever they do make their way back into the fold. Johnny Lasagna, yeah, I'm guessing my Talking Yanks reported there was some gap in there before you and I were supposed to record last night. Guess that's where I missed the report of his elbow. So Johnny Lasagna, if that was the last time we see you in pinstripes, hell of a run. Does feel like it was kind of a Chad Green situation with him as well, where they got a lot of run at him out of him, and he was one of the guys, the converted starting pitchers to a long reliever type that ultimately now towards the tail end of that run with the team, it's kind of going down in flames, kind of like Chad Green's run did towards the end there with his injuries as well. But so kind of pivoting here, you alluded to it. I'm just going to go right to it because you seem pretty ready to go, ready to roar. Pinstripe Panic Meter today is a 1 to 10. What stock / what's your panic around the comments made yesterday? First, the comments from Aaron Boone saying that he doesn't know if Judge will be throwing again this season. More so kind of sounding the alarm on Judge's potential to play outfield, and in a lot of ways sounding it for some time, not just for this season, because immediately you and I were texting, could be a Tommy John then that they're just kind of keeping under the radar. And then on the other side of things, Aaron Judge, not too long after that, then says, yeah, doesn't know what he's talking about, to mince words here. Basically kind of contradicting everything Booney had said. So I throw it to you first, good sir. What do you have on a 1 to 10 for a panic rating? And how much stock do you put in the comments? And the little back and forth between the top two Aarons in the organization yesterday.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of weird, and you don't want to put too much stock into it, but there is a lot of stock to put into it, right? And I already mentioned it probably twice in the first 12 minutes of the show, and now we're getting into it. There's certainly stuff to talk about here. My panic meter originally, when Aaron Boone made his comments saying it's likely that we won't see Judge at full strength in the outfield making the throws we're used to, that put me up to an 8 or 9, right? I texted you. I said it seems like this is a bigger problem than the Yankees are making it out to be. I saw a tweet mentioning Aaron Hicks a couple years ago when Hicks was kind of going through the same thing, and it led him to a longer process coming back from Tommy John over the offseason because it was the same thing. The UCLA, the UCL was intact, right? But then, he kept throwing on it and it got worse, and eventually he just couldn't throw anymore, and it led to Tommy John in the offseason. So that was where my first thought was. So an 8 or 9 right off the bat. When Aaron Judge comes back and says what Aaron Judge says, right away the panic just goes right back down because I believe Aaron Judge more than I believe Aaron Boone, right? Which I don't think is the case in most organizations. You usually don't trust the player more than the manager, but it's the sad reality. I'd put it as the New York Yankees go. But Aaron Judge's comments were straight to the point. It was, and I'm pulling up, I don't know why he said that. He hasn't seen me throw for the past 2 weeks, so I'm pretty confident I'll get back. I mean, yeah, if the captain is saying that, I'm going to believe the captain. He's the one who knows what his arm feels like. He's the one who's seen himself throw, right? I do have concern over the fact that Aaron Boone has not seen Aaron Judge throw in two weeks. Yes, I understand that the trainers are out there and other guys are out there watching Judge and monitoring how he feels, but you're the manager, and this is not just your best player, but this is arguably the best player in baseball, potentially second best, whatever you want to consider it, and you don't know the status, and you're going to get asked about Judge nonstop. So for me, my panic for Aaron Boone's, managerial position would go up. I think this comment could signify, if things continue to go down the wrong track, the beginning of the end for Boone at manager if he really makes Aaron Judge mad. That's a different conversation for a different day. I don't put much stock into what Boone said anymore. I think Aaron Judge is telling the truth. I think Aaron Judge knows how he feels. And I don't think, I agree. I don't think we'll ever, or for now, we'll see Judge making those throws from deep in the outfield to home plate. But the cutoff man exists for a reason. And you can be just as effective hitting the cutoff man as you can be on a straight line drive. Or line throw straight to the catcher. So I'm not putting much into it, but it certainly is kind of, something to get the popcorn out and watch and see if this is a little bit of tension between the two.
It's perplexing. I don't know how many times you hear a manager and a player outright contradict each other, and only within the span of maybe 5 hours, where Boone has his comments on WFAN saying that, and then Judge immediately to the press when he gets the opportunity and it's posed to him, refutes the claim. I think, as you said it there, the fact that the manager is not necessarily in tune with how his players throwing, hasn't seen him throw in 2 weeks, and how his recovery is going, is worrisome in its own right. But it brings up the bigger question that we've had for some time with this team that you and I were texting about last night. This is another iteration of this team and Aaron Boone being so cagey with injuries that it almost makes you come off like an idiot when I understand why they try to do it. I really do. And it's something that we've talked about again for some time. Apologies for the notification that apparently slipped through my do not disturb. But it's something we've talked about for some time where, you kind of play a two double-edged sword game when you don't disclose injuries. You have the side of, okay, you're keeping everything too close to the vest. You don't want to give a competitive advantage. And you also don't necessarily want to do it without the kind of blessing of your players. But on the other side of things, if you know the status of your players, which right now it seems like Aaron Boone doesn't, and that's a much, much larger question, which raises my panic to a pretty high mark in just a second here. But when it feels like you don't understand your players, then if you're not giving out any kind of data, any kind of real timetable, or really any kind of diagnosis, I understand you're not a doctor, but you're the second guy outside of the doctor who should know what's going on with his team. So for me, this is just another kind of feather in the cap of what feels like it has just been a longer chapter than in seasons past of just injuries either being misdiagnosed, timetables not properly being given, or just straight up mismanaging players when they are injured. So the fact that the manager hasn't watched it's not just another player, it's the captain of the team, hasn't watched him throw in 2 weeks. And for Judge, you know what? It kind of made me a little happy on the Judge side of things, because it was finally like Judge had the cojones to go up against Boone. And we've wanted to see that for 2 weeks. We've been clamoring and saying, you're the captain. You're the guy who we want to see get fired up and get peed off and use the media kind of as a vessel to get your messaging across to the rest of the team. And so in a situation like this, where it's something that seems so minuscule and just a back and forth that, like you said, maybe it's worth getting the popcorn out. It's just another thing that, even in a nice stretch right now for the Yankees, makes you raise the eyebrows of maybe bigger questions going on in the locker room, more so bigger questions going on in the medical staff, things that we won't get the answer to, things we're not privy to know behind the scenes, but it's enough for me to raise my panic. I'll even go in at like a 7-8, maybe an 8-1, because it's not necessarily just is Boone a bad manager in that thing, and what are we rating that? Or panic about Judge getting back. To me, I'm raising my panic meter because I'm saying this is just another thing that makes me concerned and not put stock in what you're saying about injuries. And again, for a team that likes to play everything close to the vest, you should at least have some semblance of confidence that they're managing things correctly. And when we're getting players speaking out that they've been injured for some time, or their manager's not even privy to the status of them, that doesn't give you confidence. It just seems like you don't know what you're doing.
It feels to me that Aaron Judge's comments last night are the first comments we've seen Aaron Judge show displeasure or discontent with being a New York Yankee, right? And he's a captain. He's been through so much over his, whatever now, since he got called up, however many seasons that equates to. I don't want to think about it. It makes me feel old, right? But just thinking about it, he's never really come out. And this has been a team that's missed the playoffs for a year. This is a team that's had these rough stretches, these long losing streaks. It's had poor managerial decisions. It's had poor front office decisions at trade deadlines, right? And Aaron Judge has really stayed quiet on all of it. And finally, last night, it feels like it was almost, I don't want to say quite the boiling point, because I think if it was a boiling point, it would have been a lot more and a lot bigger of a story yesterday, and a lot longer than just 2 sentences that Judge said. But he was straight to the point, and he was short with his response for a reason. He's angry. He's mad, right? If you're the manager of the New York Yankees, as Aaron Boone is, I don't care if you're trying to hide things, right? I mentioned college football coming back, right? When I was like, maybe we shouldn't talk about the Yankees. They hide injuries all the time, right? They don't want you to know. Plus, there's the fact that they're young men that their injury history doesn't really come out because of the NFL draft that comes up and all that stuff, right? We don't hear about college injuries. But when you get to the professionals, you hear about it all the time, because There's betting involved with it. There's fan affairs involved with it. All of that stuff's involved with it. And so, I mean, I get it to an extent. You don't want to say, oh, Aaron Judge will be back on Thursday in right field, and then he's not there. I completely understand that aspect. But if you don't know that Aaron Judge, if he's going to be 100% in the outfield or if he's going to be 75%, don't go say it till it can, be confirmed by Judge himself. This is just a really bad look, and it shows disconnect, right, between the players and the manager and the manager and the general manager, right? When Brian Cashman a couple of weeks ago on ESPN or wherever his interview was following the trade deadline, he kept saying, I've given the manager the tools. I've given the manager the tools. There's disconnect throughout this organization. And I think last night was the first time we've seen it go field level to the point a player was actually angry, right? We've seen it go, to the field when Aaron Boone decides to pitch Nestor Cortez instead of Tim Hill, but we haven't seen it to the point where it boiled to a player getting angry. And I think last night, now we don't have the video. It was just, the tweet that went out about what Judge said. I'd love to see and hear the tone he said it with and the facial expression, right? Was it brand new news to him? Had Boone maybe tipped him off earlier in the day? Like, I accidentally said this on 660, right? Maybe not my best look there. Can we, just talk about it, blow it over? Or was this the first time he heard about it? And it was him reacting raw to the situation and didn't get the chance to talk to Boone about it. Whatever the case is, when your captain is speaking up and clearly showing displeasure, you need to think yourself through as an organization. And I think right now is not the time, winning 6 of the last 7 for this team to do it, but it's certainly something you got to talk about in the offseason. And I think the first move, whenever the Yankees are done, whether that be after the championship parade or if that be early on in the postseason or if that be a postseason failure, not making it, I think the first move is that Hal Steinbrenner should bring Aaron Judge one-on-one to his office, right? Keep Brian Cashman out of it. Keep everyone else out of it. Hal Steinbrenner with Aaron Judge and just ask him what he wants and ask him what needs to change. And if that's Aaron Boone, that's Aaron Boone, right? And I don't like baseball being a sport where one player controls the team, right? You see it in basketball all the time. LeBron has gotten so many coaches fired. And it's like, all right, dude, you're a little much there, but the basketball rosters are small. The roster's a lot bigger in baseball. There's more guys on the field, and it's not a sport where one player can win or lose games consistently over a 162-game season. But at the end of it, he's the captain. He's the guy wearing the C. He's the most, notable name in New York, potentially in the United States. I think Shohei beats him worldwide, but I would say Judge beats him nationwide. And I think that's what you need to do. Hal Steinbrenner, bring Judge in, hash everything out, because clearly there's disconnect and something is not quite 100% with the captain.
I think what they really should do is they should, really sit down and really think things through. And I think they should hire an outside company, maybe in the form of what's the word I'm looking for?
An audit?
Audit, that they should have an audit and they should figure out, what's going on in the locker room. Because last time it worked well. They said, hey, you see that short porch over there? Aim for that. Go for guys who can hit that. Anyways, that was my favorite bit from Com Radio when we would talk about the audit. So maybe they bring it back. Maybe the audit just finds that Aaron Boone's a good general manager or good manager, and that
Brian. I don't think any audit would, unless it's like the Pirates audit.
Secretly the guy with the auditor with a fake mustache and a fake nose, kind of one of those setups, because really the guy pulling the strings anyways. But I digress. Hey, we're going to move on to something here that I'm excited to talk about that has nothing to do, well, on the surface with the Yankees. I'm excited about the fact that Major League Baseball might be getting some new teams soon. Now, that is something that in its own right, I think you're excited about too. Let's get this. This is going to be a debate. So I think let's get that off the bat. You agree. I agree. We both want 2 new teams coming to Major League Baseball. Now, with that said, there was a proposed realignment. And it has sparked some discourse, to say the least, across Major League Baseball. This comes on the backs of Rob Manfred basically saying that it's as clear as day. We are heading towards a Major League Baseball realignment with 2 teams likely to be added in form of an expansion. I do think the 2 teams that you have on the ticker below are the 2 cities that should be getting a team. A couple other cities have been floated: Portland, Salt Lake City, 2 of the other top destinations floated actually by The Athletic as well. And I will also get this off the bat because I'm arguing on the positive side. Justin is on the judgmental side. Essentially, this is a new segment that we are calling Judgmental Justin versus Positive Price. Didn't take us a lot of time. We're not that creative, folks, but it's our
Did you
essential
know
way.
judgmental doesn't have an E between the G and the M? Because that's what I learned yesterday when I typed up this graphic. Because I spelt judgmental with an E, and then I was like, that looks wrong, but I don't know how else you'd spell it. And I had to go look up. And I shouldn't be saying this because now this is, stuff you can use against me. But I had to, look up online how to spell judgmental. Apparently there's no E in it, and it really bothered me.
We're going to fast forward to 5 minutes now when we're screaming at each other, and I'm going to scream, "You didn't even know there was an E!" But anyway, so this is a new segment we're going to do. We're not that creative, but essentially how it is going to be is Justin feels a negative way about this. I feel a positive way. Again, I want to preface the ticker on this bottom going through here. I agree with the cities proposed. I agree with most of the potential realignment. I do fear that there's a very, very clear argument that Justin's going to have here that I'm still going to try to refute. But I want to say now that this is not the best realignment article out there. This is just the biggest name that proposed the realignment article out there. There are much better, more realistic realignments out there. But with that said, Justin, the floor is yours. I'm going to be ready to rebuttal once you're done.
All right. Again, I'm going to preface it by saying this. I agree with expansion. I agree that there's a need to find that, those cities that have a passion for baseball: Charlotte, Nashville, Montreal, Salt Lake City, Portland, just some of those in general. However, I see many problems focusing on realignment and expansion at this point in time for Major League Baseball. Let me go to my notes and let me start with this. Part of the realignment is to make it easier to travel players, right? It's less, travel throughout the country. It's less travel across the country, all that stuff. Let me start by saying the MLB messed up with travel and with scheduling in 2023 when they went to the balanced schedule look. I don't want to say this could all be avoided because expansion would be on the table regardless because it's about the money, right? I want to talk about the balanced schedule. What it used to be each AL team twice in the year, each interleague team, it was every couple years. You would play the East or whatever it was. Yeah, the East one year, you'd play the Central one year, you'd play the West one year in the other league, and you would, in turn, you'd also have your rival, the Mets, for example, for the Yankees. You'd play them a couple times. You'd play 76 division games prior to changing to this balanced schedule. Nowadays, you play each AL team twice, home and away. You play each interleague team once throughout the season, and you play 52 division games. You have ruined baseball by doing that balanced schedule. We have not seen Yankees, Red Sox prior to June each of the last 2 years. Part of this expansion, like I said, is making it easier to travel and schedule. As this proposed realignment on the bottom of your screen does, it does just that. What you're going to see: more division games, less travel cross country. How could that have been avoided? Oh, back in 2022, when the schedule was still its old way and you weren't doing what you are now. I was all about the Dodgers and Yankees facing every 3 years or whatever it was. And, it would take forever for the Yankees to go to Dodger Stadium and for the Dodgers to come back. It was different. I think it led to a little bit more passion for those old school rivalries. The Yankees Giants, who both used to call New York home, the Yankees Dodgers, all that stuff, I think had a little bit more meaning. Now it's like, oh crap, they're going to San Francisco this week, or their second or third series of the season, they're out in Arizona. It doesn't mean as much. Plus, you took the games away from Boston, right? And we'll get to the rivalry, and I'll save some of that for the next segment. But you took games away that were more meaningful. And now the Yankees haven't played Boston until June each of the last 2 years, and you've lost a little bit of the most historic rivalry in baseball. And Rob Manfred even said the other day that the Padres-Dodgers rivalry is almost up there with the Red Sox and the Yankees. And it's 2 completely different rivalries because one's based on history and one's based on the fact they're in the same division and trying to spend a lot of money, right? So for me, I think part of the issue at stake with traveling and scheduling is changing the schedule a couple years ago. It's not my biggest issue, but I thought it was at least worth noting. Now, to get really into it, you're talking about adding 2 teams to Major League Baseball. Let me name you a couple of teams that have problems. Pittsburgh, Miami, the A's, the White Sox, the Rays, Colorado. I could probably add the Guardians there with how much they don't like to spend. I could add the Twins based off how they, attack the trade deadline, trying to clear out all their cap space. You cannot consider adding teams to baseball until you fix the problems with your current organizations. These are teams that haven't been competitive in years. The Colorado Rockies, Pittsburgh Pirates, Miami Marlins. We're always, and I know the Marlins have gotten hot this season, but how many years of bad baseball has Miami had? How many years of bad baseball has Colorado? As much as they can still bring the fans in, they cannot put a playable or winnable product on the field in Coors for years now. Same thing with Pittsburgh. It's a mess over there. You had the whole Roberto Clemente issue earlier in the year, replacing his, honor with a Surfside ad, and then, the Bucko blocks. I mean, everything has gone wrong for the Pittsburgh Pirates. How are you going to add 2 new teams when you have a fifth of your league already in shambles? And I know the A's will probably self-correct a little bit in Vegas, but will they? Right? If their ownership's still in charge when they get to Vegas, are they going to get players? They might, because it's Vegas, but I don't know how much it's really going to change. Until you fix problems with the 6 teams that I just named, and you can consider a couple more, you cannot consider adding new teams. You have to figure out these problems. You have to start forcing teams to sell. And I know that, brings in a whole legal aspect, but if owners aren't willing to spend money, then you got to do something about it. And I know they want the salary cap, which adds in the salary floor. That's not going to change anything. You overpay for one player, then you just bring in a bunch of bag of chips all around the rest of the field, and that doesn't change anything. Because you can look at the Pittsburgh Pirates and say they signed Ke'Bryan Hayes to a massive extension. They did. But what about all the guys that they let go? Garrett Cole, Paul Skeens will probably be gone in a couple years. You cannot add Charlotte, Montreal, Nashville, whatever teams they are, until you fix your current problems. That's issue number 1 that I have. My second qualm with this is you make super divisions. And I understand that this proposed realignment is only one out of a million different solutions you could go with it, but you have to think about it in general. You think about trying to group the teams in the Northeast. It's Boston, it's Philadelphia, it's the Yankees, it's the Mets. It's these teams that are good because they live near big cities, right? And that is going to become a problem throughout. You can look at different divisions and see different super divisions already forming. The East, right there, going across your screen, is one of them. And then on the flip side of that, you can also look at other divisions and say none of these teams could play to, win the World Series, and they're going to get an automatic playoff team. I think that has to be looked at, and you have to do realignment in a way that, yes, you make travel and you make scheduling easier, but you don't form super divisions and then really bad divisions. That's just going to lead to problems. Look at college football. The SEC and the Big Ten are forming these super divisions, and what happens when the playoffs come around? The group of 5 gets rolled right over. Boise State did from Penn State. You look at the Big 12. I know Arizona State put up a heck of a fight. Clemson got rolled over last year. SMU got rolled over last year. You get my point. If you have super divisions, you are going to have a misaligned postseason format. Speaking of the postseason format, another thing that comes with expansion and realignment, you are going to have to make a bigger playoff picture. You already have 6 teams from each league making the playoffs. That's 12 of 30 making the playoffs already. How far up are you going to go with it? Realistically, if there's 8 divisions, you're probably thinking 16 teams are making the playoffs. That would be half the league if you add 2 more. Does half the league deserve to make the playoffs? Absolutely not. Go check the NBA and go check the NFL and see how that's worked out for them. It doesn't work out great. You are adding and you are diluting the game to make money in the regular season, which I get, it's going to help, but you are diluting the sport, specifically in the postseason. You're probably going to have more rounds in the postseason. It's going to be a mess, right? That's my third qualm. My fourth qualm, and I will end here. Rivalries, right? Yankees, Red Sox. They would most likely stay in the exact same division. That would be fun. There are rivalries that are going to be split up by realignment. Division rivalries exist all over the place. I mean, I can name a bunch: the Cubs and the Brewers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Padres, the Dodgers. Rangers, Astros a little bit, whatever you want to make it out to be. There's, Braves, Phillies, Mets, Phillies, that type of stuff. There's these division rivalries. There's also the city rivalries, the interleague rivalries, the Yankees, Mets. And this is where I'm going to hone in here for a couple moments. The Yankees, Mets, let's take them for example. What makes the Yankees and Mets fun? They face twice a season. They are the 6 most anticipated matchups on Yankee fans' radars and Mets fans' radars when the schedule gets dropped. Yeah, it looks cool to have a series against Red Sox in, September, but it could also mean nothing like it has the last couple of years. The Yankees Mets were the 6 most anticipated matchups this year for the Yankees and the Mets, because the Juan Sotos, the Clay Holmes, the Carlos Mendozas, I mean, you could go years past when other stars switched between the two teams, and they've got a budding rivalry because Steve Cohen has come in and opened his pockets, and Hal Steinbrenner's got a little stingy as he gets a little older. You are going to ruin this rivalry if you put two teams in the same city in the same division. Same thing in Chicago with the White Sox and Cubs. Same thing with, the Angels and the Dodgers. Realignment would put these guys in the same, division. That's not good for baseball. I think the Yankees Mets, the way they play it, is awesome. I'm not scared to face the Mets. I know people might think that. I'm not scared to face them, but it's better entertainment value. It's better for the fans if these teams aren't facing off. You are going to dilute that rivalry to have, let's just say, 12 meetings a year. I'm making up an arbitrary number. Maybe it would probably be a little bit more, 15 meetings a year between the two sides, whatever the case is. That's not fun anymore, right? Especially if one team starts to suck. And that's bound to happen given the ups and downs of baseball throughout history. One team is going to struggle, one team's going to get good, and it's going to be lopsided. But the fun part being in the NL and AL is, regardless of team records, 6 games a year, it's fun to watch those teams clash. And I think that goes for multiple different, rivalries and teams throughout the league. And I'd hate to see that go. I'd hate to see the Yankees and Mets play more than they should. I think it ruins the city. I think it ruins that rivalry, the interleague rivalry. And I just don't think it makes sense. And I'm not going to get in the financial sense either, but I don't think that makes financial sense for the league either. But those are my qualms. There's a lot of them, and they're all over the place.
So I'm going to just make my positive points, and then I will kind of give you my rebuttal, because there was one word you said in there at one point that I was hoping you would say in anticipation of this. So I'll get to that at some point. But first and foremost, this is the biggest overarching point of this that I wanted to make sure you were in agreement on. The Major League Baseball kind of state of the league, and I think you and I can agree on this. The ratings have varied over the past couple of years. They have fluctuated in a big way. It is what has made this TV situation that is coming to its conclusion, hopefully soon, so interesting, because you don't really know who's going to be in the ring for it. And there's been poor coverage, and there's been poor ratings, and then there's been good ratings, and it's really just a matter of the Major League Baseball ebbs and flows being a lot greater than there have been in some other leagues. Now, to bounce off of that, though, Major League Baseball is a league that has tried, in a way that some other leagues haven't, to make some changes in the past couple of years to make the league more watchable. They have added the pitch clock that I think there's still a lot of baseball purists that don't like it, including Justin, but a majority of people are still a fan of it, I would say. I think there's pitchers who would say that it's played an impact on Tommy John, but a majority of casual fans, I think a good bit of regular fans, and I would say even some of the players would prefer pitch clock than not having it and having some weird deliveries and just games being droned on a lot longer than they need to be. Bigger bases, whatever it means. They have tried to make changes to make Major League Baseball more watchable. One thing that will already make Major League Baseball more watchable, adding it to 2 of the biggest, most burgeoning cities in pretty much the country right now, because I think the 2 cities that, for example, here we'll use on the ticker here, are 2 of the most well-emerged cities in the last couple years. We'll go with Nashville here as the biggest point because I think that's the city that is far and away the most likely to get a team. Manfred said that the other day. Passan said it. Nashville's been the city that everybody's been talking about for some time. Even when we were out there for a week, there was talk of, looking forward to getting a baseball team. That is a city that is very, very, very heavily investing in sports. They are revamping the Tennessee Titans Stadium. I don't think it's going to be long before the Predators are also hosting a NBA team within their confines as well, because Nashville is a city that has been on the come up for some time, and it's only getting better. It's only getting bigger. And getting a Major League Baseball team there, we watched the Vanderbilt baseball game. They draw a crowd, even if it wasn't a massive crowd in the middle of the week in a hot day. And against Valparaiso, they still drew a crowd. Fans have backed that team. They have been faithful behind that team. And I'll say this, they've given them a good product to root for, but it doesn't matter. Nashville's also a massive tourist destination that is going to put asses in seats. So that's my first point there with Nashville. Second thing here was Charlotte. Charlotte's got a lot of young professionals, a lot of people our age moving out to Charlotte. Same thing to be said to an extent with the emergence of Salt Lake City. They've got an owner in Utah right now with the Mammoth and the Jazz, who is somebody who I think is one of the brightest minds in the ownership of sports right now. He's talked on Pat McAfee's show before. I want to say, just off the top of my head, his name is Ryan Smith. Yes, that's who it is. He's a young guy, too. He's 47 years old. He's been pretty committed to Utah. I think he'd be one of the first guys to get in the ring for Salt Lake City. Charlotte, like I said, an emerging city. Montreal, we all know the history there and what they could bring in getting a team back. So all these cities, I think, would make a great baseball destination. And adding to that, I also think they'd be a better destination than some of the cities that currently have teams. Because one of the biggest refutes to the points that you already made here is that some of those teams you mentioned just have fan bases that aren't as vast anymore or haven't necessarily been as invested. And I don't necessarily think that's indicative because of the product. In some cases, it's just because they're not invested. And I think that might be because markets change over time. It's the reason teams move. It's the reason Oakland's not going to have a Major League Baseball team any longer and that Vegas is going to get a team. And that also, in part, Oakland's team did show up in the past couple years before you try to refute that. But the big thing there is market size. The same reason Nashville might not have a vast, reliable fan base, but they're a tourist destination and they're going to put asses in seats the same way Vegas is. But Oakland is the example I'll use there because Oakland did have winning products over the past couple years. Did they invest in their teams? No, in the long term. Did they produce winning products? Yes. Were asses in seats for some of those games? Absolutely. Were asses in seats a majority of the time? The answer is no. They didn't invest in the team. So kapoof, they head to Vegas. So already right off the bat there, I knew where this was going. I knew you were going to come up with something about there's already a chunk of the league that's not been managed properly. That's true.
1/5.
1/5 of the league. Perfect. I was actually
20%. 20% for numbers, people.
I was going to give you a quarter, so I was even going to give you a little bit more credit there. I don't think that's necessarily indicative of the league state and that they can't add two teams. I think that's, as you said, poor ownership playing a big factor. And I also think there's something to be said with the $2.2 billion expansion fees that would be coming down the pike that could allow them to have a little bit more financial flexibility. Is anything going to change if your owners aren't necessarily proving that they're going to invest in the product? No. But if there's going to be a little bit more money, there's owners that are clearly clamoring for expansion so that they can get their paws on that. I do think there should be something where ownership gets forced to change hands if teams aren't committed to producing a winning product. I think that's the only way that you're going to avoid a salary cap, which is going to be inevitable if that change doesn't occur. So I'll give you a credit on that point as well, but I also think there's a lot of ways Major League Baseball can change that without completely abandoning the idea of realignment. My point simply has kind of boiled down to this the entire time. You're talking about growing the game when you're Major League Baseball. You're talking about driving up ratings, getting more fans invested in the game. Nashville might be a tourist destination the same way Vegas is, but they're going to get people to go to their games. It's something to do. It's an activity during the spring, during the summer, during the fall. You're going to get people to go to the games. You're going to get more revenue. You're going to get people in seats. Same way you will with Charlotte. Same way I think you would with Salt Lake City. Same way you would if Montreal saw a team return to its destination. So I think you're going to be adding in this move 2 cities that are going to get calculated owners assigned to those teams. You're going to get a very, very significant financial investment in the area as well in the economy. I think from a financial standpoint, from a rating standpoint, from a fan interest standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. Now, to your point, though, about schedules and matchups, I do think that there's a lot that you said there about balanced schedules that kind of made things change a lot in Major League Baseball over the last couple of years, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And I think we could do a whole episode on it because there was some kind of allure in the fact that there was the interleague matchups. We wouldn't see that often. And I remember when the Cubs and the Yankees were squaring off a couple of years ago, how that was must watch television because they don't meet up that often. And now, yes, you have diluted the kind of sanctity of those matchups by playing them every year. But it's kind of, I think, Major League Baseball's answer back, yes, to travel, but also to ratings. If the ratings weren't proving that some of those matchups weren't as, holy grail matchups like the Dodgers and Yankees or Cubs and Yankees, who really was going to put that time in to watch a Diamondbacks team and an Orioles team that were struggling just because they don't see each other that often? Could it be fun for those fan bases? Absolutely. But if the teams are struggling, it doesn't hold that same weight. I think our opinion on that is a little bit more biased because we come from a team and a brand that is so institutionalized that we're fans of, that it's a little bit more must watch when you see those teams you don't typically see play them. I do think that there's some good that's come of it, especially in a travel sense. I think this proposed realignment below, I think we both agree, is definitely not the solution to realigning the league. There's much better realignments out there, but I don't think it dilutes rivalries. I think that's the other contradiction to your point there. I know your biggest combat is going to be the topic we're going to go to in a second here about the Red Sox and the Yankees, and that rivalry's been diluted the last couple of years. But their matchups in this division aren't going to change the same way they haven't changed over the past couple of years. They've gotten less in this balanced schedule, and it hasn't changed anything, dude. This rivalry has not been losing steam because of the matchups, the quantity of matchups, or anything along those lines. The rivalry's been losing steam, even with both teams being good in this past half a decade at points, because the personnel. Do you think Aaron Judge is going to go out there and fight somebody on the other side for the Red Sox, or you're going to see that happen with Volpe? It's just the guys in the Yankees brand of baseball right now and the Red Sox brand of baseball not necessarily jiving to create fireworks the same way they did years ago, because you're still getting those fireworks in the Yankees-Mets series, and I think you'd still get them if they played triple the amount of times in a season. I think it's more so about the personnel, more so about the kind of state of your team and state of the characters on your team and personalities on your team. And that's the main reason I think we've seen a Yankees and Red Sox rivalry that, again, is playing just as much as the Yankees would see the Phillies or see the Mets in this proposed realignment on your ticker below. That's not the problem. The problem is personnel and a much bigger thing and the lack of personalities at points. I don't think that's because of the quantity of matchups you're getting. So I don't see necessarily the point in what you're saying there. I think the balanced schedules is a good point that we could do an entire episode on, because it has, in some cases, at least for the Yankees, again, kind of taken away that sanctity of these cool matchups that we don't typically see. But I don't think that's a sentiment shared by a lot of casual fan or by a lot of other fans. And I think for a lot of casual fans, it's just kind of a cool opportunity to see your team play a different team once a season that you wouldn't normally see. And just because it doesn't happen every 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is anymore, I still don't think it dilutes the matchup that much. And for a rivalry that's already been diluted in Yankees and Red Sox because of personalities, hell, I'd love to see the Mets and Phillies more than just once a year, and in the Mets case, 6 times a year. I really do think that there's a lot that's wrong with the thing that's on the ticker below, but I also don't think that diluting the rivalries is the biggest point and the biggest hill for you to die on. I think we both proposed a lot of good and a lot of bad from this year. I'm sure people have opposite sides of who they would think won this debate. I think you brought up some very valid points. That's why I don't think there's going to be some heated screaming match here. I don't know if there's anything you want to contradict, but I think my biggest thing to say here is that realignment, I think, is a necessary evil for Major League Baseball that you'd have to agree with. I don't even think it's an evil. I think it's a very good thing for Major League Baseball, because you're going to be investing in 2 markets that you're going to get to, again, choose the owners, choose things properly. And I think there could be a lot of good that comes from adding those 2 teams to Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of great points. I think that was a great debate. I think we have a future maybe in politics, probably you more than me. But I'll come back on some things. I think first of all, you talk about marketing the sport a little bit. You mentioned, how these rivalries could help that, and how you're trying to grow the game. I think one area, get rid of, don't get rid of it, but aside from expansion, aside from realignment, MLB does a horrible job of capitalizing on the time it's given. Baseball season runs for the most part by itself, right? It's the dog days of summer in baseball, but it's also the dog days of summer in terms of sports, right? After June, the NBA and NHL are done. Football, even the preseason, nobody tunes in outside of the first quarter unless you're a diehard. And as much as I love my Giants, I don't care who's playing in the fourth quarter. Once Jackson Dart's out of the game, I'm done watching the game right now. But I think there's areas to improve on there that could help grow the game just as much as a proposed realignment could. How about the 4th of July? How have you not been able to market the 4th of July? The only holiday that you have alone in baseball, right? And you lose to a hot dog eating competition, which I'm not knocking the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Joey Chestnut's a true
That
athlete
hasn't
there.
been getting as good in
But
recent years, though.
it hasn't. They kicked Joey out last year because of the vegan hot dogs, but we won't get into all that. But I mean, you're failing to market the 4th of July. You're failing to market some big moments, or the fact that you're alone, right? This players weekend this weekend, did you really notice anything? I didn't. I thought it was a flop. And I get it. It was capped off by the Little League World Classic, or Little League Classic. I love that event. I love that they went to a racetrack. I think that type of stuff in the Field of Dreams a couple of years ago, that can do just as much for marketing as expansion and as realignment. And I think Rob Manfred said the other day, or said yesterday even, that when you look at the ratings, they're up this year for baseball across the board. I know Yes Network posted today, they're up 5.5% from where they were last year, which is pretty impressive. And the Yankees, I think, have had a worse year this year than they did last year, and they're still up. So I think everything's on the right track. I think the reason I'm a little bit more, wary about this is probably because we haven't seen the MLB's actual plan for this. And I think there's a lot to be ironed out by there that could ease the nerves. I disagree on the fact that, the rivalries would be less diluted. I think they would be. And I think even I forgot one of them. How about the Yankees Astros starting to heat up, right? A little bit. And now you might take that away because you're not going to see the Astros because they could be whatever. There's no American League, National League in these proposed scenarios. There's so much to figure out. And I think it's just so new that's why I've got all the problems that I listed with it. Do I see it as a great thing for the sport? Yeah, anytime you can grow the game, grow the game. But there's so much there to fix right now that I think you got to aim to do that first. You got to force Bob Nutting out of Pittsburgh. You got to force Colorado to do something. And I know there's legal aspects behind all this. And I know, Tampa Bay used to be a great baseball city, but their, stadium fell apart. And this year now even they're playing elsewhere. But that's an area to improve. Baseball in Florida should be a hot spot, and you can't get fans at the Rays or the Marlins. I mean, that to me screams problematic, and I think those are the issues you got to go for first. Now, will it be automatically helped when, Nashville goes to Miami because everyone wants to see this new team? Yeah, it will help. I'm not saying it won't, but it's not about those instances, those, one-off instances. It's about all together, that those 6 teams that I named, and you could probably add a couple or fix a little bit, they need, I'd say, a little bit of help before you go and add 2. And I know we're a couple years away from this and there's a whole bidding war, but I need to see baseball kind of find its own with the 30 teams they have first before you really dig down deep into this, specifically the realignment. If you add teams now, you could add those 2 teams, throw them in a division, and I think they're fine. But I'm talking this bigger picture of realignment, which they kind of want to go hand in hand with. I think that's a bad choice. Get those 2 teams in as quick as possible, throw them into divisions, make them 6-team divisions, who cares, and just go for it that way and see what happens. And I think then you can focus on realignment a little bit more. But I'd say you're equally as right there. And I guess this became less of a debate and more of a, hey, here's the negatives of realignment and here's the positives. And I guess that works too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that like you made a very good point about some of the divisions being weaker than the others. I mean, look at the Red Sox, Mets, Yanks, and Phillies this year, all in playoff contention. And then you look at a team. I mean, I'll just pick a random one really on the ticker there, but the Braves, Marlins, Nashville, and Rays. I mean, you're not expecting an expansion team to be immediately competitive. The Rays have been all over the place this year. The Braves have been all over the place this year. The
And
Marlins
how
have
about
heated
that
up.
one? I don't know if you're at the same place, but Orioles, Charlotte, Pirates, and Nationals.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
who comes out of
horrible
that?
division.
So, and I do think there is some, you get the NFC South kind of vibes from some of these divisions. And I do think that's an inevitable part of, potential of a division being stacked. I also think there's the reality that you're putting bigger markets in bigger in those divisions. I mean, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, those are three of your biggest markets right there. And you're going to put that all in the East. So I do think that there's a lot to be said in that regard. Even Los Angeles, San Diego, and Arizona right there at the bottom of your ticker as it rolls out here. So I do think that those were some really good points you made. I don't think that they're going to be able to force owners out. I think at some point there's going to be a change that just inevitably happens. I think it's much needed. I think there's going to be two teams added, though. I do think it's going to shake up divisions, and I do think that there's going to be some fun intrigue. I also think there's something to be said with a lot of these teams are in cities right now that aren't necessarily thriving. And it goes to the economic thing I said before, that I think that plays a part in all of it. There's teams that move for a reason. I think that's part of the biggest reason with Oakland. It's not just the fan base, guys. It's the fact that Oakland as a city itself isn't necessarily the most lucrative place to live on the map
They
right
lost Golden State too. I think a lot of
now.
people overlooked that. They lost the Raiders. Oakland
Yeah,
is
so
not a
it's
city
not
to have
just
sports right now.
because yeah, it's not just because, oh, the
It's
Coliseum is falling apart or the fans aren't invested. There's a lot to do with the cities, the crime rates, the economics, the everything of it all.
this is
It plays a big factor, even if we don't think it is. That's above our pay grade to talk about, but it does play a big factor in a lot of the decision making.
This is funny to say because I used to roll my eyes every time the guy would say it, but James Franklin at Penn State used to say for everything to go right for Penn State football, he needed to be in alignment with the AD Pat Kraft, and he needed to be in alignment with Neely Bendapudi, the president. It's the same thing in a city, right? You need to be all that aligned, and you don't have that right now. And I think what sucks is there's some really good cities. Colorado, for example, they've got a fan base that shows out each and every night for the
And it,
Colorado Rockies, and they can't get an owner to make that team competitive. And I get it. It's a little tough to get some guys out to Colorado, especially pitchers because of the ballpark, given, the altitude and all that. But Pittsburgh too, beautiful city, beautiful ballpark. What's the holdup? Bob Nutting doesn't want to open his wallet. And you see all these guys, these stars leave. They haven't been relevant since Johnny Cueto was on the mound in, I think, the 2013 AL wild card, right? So it's that type of stuff that unfortunately hinders baseball's ability to be really great. And there are great things. You mentioned the media rights, the new media rights coming out. This looks great. When you start looking at, and I know some new things came out and some things that I'm not too happy with, but all around, NBC having Sunday night baseball in the summer. NBC's got Sunday night basketball now. NBC's got Sunday night football. You're putting them baseball right on the map with every other sport that we have felt for a couple of years now. Baseball's been a little behind the NFL. They've been a little behind NFL. The only league they've had the upper hand on is the NHL, and they were starting to slip away from that too. So there's a lot of good, and I think those media contracts only increase, with Nashville coming in and with maybe a Charlotte or, for Canada's sake, Montreal would be awesome to have a team back, maybe Vancouver, whatever the case is. You get the point. There are a lot of positives, and I think you outlined them well.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say on this year, because there's a lot of media rights buzz, and I think one of the topics we will be having on the show in the coming weeks is when everything's finalized talking about it. You missed on Netflix there. That's another company that I think a lot of people are very split on their
Well,
getting
that's
into.
the one I disagree on. That's why I skipped it.
But there's a lot of people being split about them getting involved in live sports, just like Apple TV.
Yeah.
But we've seen that they do pretty well with those. I think it's kind of called like a flagpole event, something where they can just kind of put all their eggs into. Think of the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. They just announced another one today, Jake Paul and Tank Davis. But you even think about the Christmas games, things that make it feel a little bit bigger. Those kind of things Netflix does well with. If Netflix gets the home run derby and a couple select games here and there, I think they'll do a good job at making them feel big. Major League Baseball's biggest problem, and I think that's kind of the perfect way to round this out, isn't necessarily, there's a lot of other problems, but I think their biggest problem isn't necessarily quality of the games. I don't think it's necessarily all the cities they're in. I don't think it's necessarily the star power of the league. I think Major League Baseball has a marketing problem, and they've had that for some time now because they are really one of the I think they rely too much on being the old boys club, the America's pastime anymore when they seen a lot of other leagues modernize and do so at varying success rates. The NBA hasn't had the most success with modernizing either. But when you look at what Major League Baseball could do, if they could modernize a little bit, not over modernize like the NBA has, they could have a lot of success. So I think there's a lot to like on both sides of media and even potential expansion. There's also a lot of drawbacks to both, like you said about Netflix getting in the ring and Apple TV and all that other stuff, but even just like you said with expansion as well. All right, we're going to end up having to fly through this because we're already at an hour, but the Major League Baseball crown jewel, I will say, rivalry still to this day, maybe outside of the Subway Series, is the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox. And this is one of those series that I do think is being built properly. I do think is being marketed properly, at least by the Yankees and the Red Sox, because this weekend is a monster one in the Bronx. It's a 4-game set that starts tomorrow, as you see on your ticker below, some of the matchups that we will see on tap this weekend. Red Sox have been in the driver's seat, but it can all get tied up this weekend if the Yankees could somehow pull a sweep off. You've got AL East implications. You've got playoff implications with the wild card, and this is definitely a matchup that is being built properly as a heavyweight clash. The kids have definitely been all right in Boston this year. Things have worked out, I think, a little bit earlier than expected, especially after you trade Rafael Devers, who might have been addition by subtraction based on how they've gelled. And for the Yankees, they're getting hot at the perfect time for this to be a really big matchup. Just some thoughts, I think, on your end of what is probably, as you have on the ticker there, the biggest matchup we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years between these two teams this weekend.
Yeah, it feels for once that this rivalry matters again, right? And we saw a little fun in the beginning of the year when Hunter Dobbins, the rookie, said, I'd, rather retire than, pitch for the New York Yankees. And then the whole instance where he said his dad was friends with Andy Pettitte or whatever the heck that was. It felt for once that there was a little bit of something, a little bit of a spark getting added to the rivalry. And it really sucks that of all people, it was Hunter Dobbins. And he is recovering from injury. He's out for the season. Wish him, I guess, the best. He's a Red Sox. But at the end of it, it felt like something was there, starting to heat up. And at the time, the Yankees were in first place. I don't remember where the Red Sox were. The Red Sox were in fourth place back in June when this first went down. And the Red Sox have taken 5 of the 6 games between these two teams so far. But, I mean, this is a series that goes a long way in deciding the AL East. And I don't want to even say just the AL East second spot. It could decide the first spot because Toronto just lost 2 of 3 to Pittsburgh. And you don't know. They've crashed. They haven't just come down to earth. They've crashed back down to earth. So the window is still wide open for the Yankees or Red Sox to take this division. And it seems like this weekend, and I know there's another series coming up at Fenway in a couple more weeks, these two are going to go a long way in deciding the East, in deciding the wild card. And that means it's fun. It's must-watch baseball. And I just want to go through the last couple of years. Last year, the Yankees finished first in the AL East. The Red Sox finished third. There was a 13-game difference in the win column between the two sides. 2023, Yankees finished fourth. Red Sox finished fifth. Sure, they were right there, neck and neck in the standings, but in the wrong way. They were bottom of the division that year. 2022, Yankees finished first. Red Sox finished fifth. 2021, Yankees finished second. Red Sox finished third. They met in the wild card. 2020, Yankees finished second. Boston fifth. 2019, Yankees first. Boston third. And then 2018, Boston first, Yankees second. The two teams meet in the DS, and we all know how that went. And I just think, to me, it finally has meaning to this storied rivalry again. And I know that we're not going to get, the benches clearing, which to an extent is disappointing because I think it adds to the rivalry. But of course, player safety. I don't want anyone getting beamed with a fastball in the head or anything like that. But that's what this rivalry used to be. And I know Joe Girardi was on Yes Network. He's done a great job the last, I think, week and a half. He's been on the broadcast. He was talking about the most heated he's ever gotten. And the second most heated he had ever gotten was Boston when they plunked A-Rod. And, the umpire just let, A-Rod just take those baseballs, but throw behind him. Ryan Dempster did, right? And to me, that's what this series has been lacking. And there's no villain right now in this, but Garrett Crochet is certainly acting like one, right? And Aaron Judge has the ability this weekend to be that, but he's not going to be vocal about it. But you have Jazz Chisholm, right? Guy's heating up at the plate now that his legs are under him, which medical malpractice. I digress for this episode, but you've got Jazz who can certainly be something. Or I mean, Caballero's been fun. He's going to get playing time. And he said last week that he wants to be a pest. He wants to piss these other teams off. And that's exactly what we're looking for, right? And this weekend, I mean, it means something. You've got good, most likely pitching matchups. These are just based off the regular order I put together. But Heel and Giolito, Fried, as bad as he's been, it's a rivalry. Maybe that resurges him a little bit, revives him. Him versus Crochet. I mean, so many good matchups. The one flaw this rivalry has this weekend, all games should be primetime games. Saturday should be on Fox, not a 1 o'clock game. And even if it's not on Fox, it should still be a 7 o'clock game. Whatever the case is, you have 3 games at 7 o'clock. You're back on ESPN. ESPN, the last couple of years, have gone away from this rivalry because it's meant nothing. And it's been crappy, right? And this series, you finally get something. And for the Yankees' sake, you hope it looks better than the rest of the matchups against them this year, where Boston's taken 5 of 6. But it's like fresh air in a rivalry that's fallen flat. And when Rob Manfred last week said that San Diego and LA are getting close to what the Yankees or Red Sox are, I have a problem with that, right? Because that's not how it's supposed to be. San Diego, when you think about it in retrospect to Boston Yankees, that rivalry is still new. And for San Diego to be the team with the, Dodgers, I think it's good for baseball. Don't get me wrong. But I have a problem if that rivalry passes this rivalry. And I think this weekend's a great weekend for it. I wouldn't care if there's some benches clearing and Tyler Austin charges Joe Kelly or whatever the case is. Give me that type of stuff, right? Give me that stuff that gives you passion and wants you to come back, for the next series at Fenway and all that stuff. I just think it's exciting time. The Yankees are hot. Boston is kind of average right now, but it's lining up to be the perfect weekend for a rivalry.
Boston, not even just average right now. I mean, they've lost 3 straight going into this series. They've also lost 3 of their last 4 series. I think this is the perfect time for the Yankees to get Boston because they're coming out of, a big win last night. We'll see what happens tonight, but I wouldn't put too much stock in it. This does feel like one of those games that if they can get some deep innings from Schlittler, even if he gets tagged for a couple runs, he might stick out there. And I really do think a part of that is that you don't want to waste your pen. You want to be at pretty much full strength heading into a 4-game set that is, as you mentioned, going to be very conclusive to the standings. I love these pitching matchups. I think there's not a bad one really in the fold. I think, like you said,
the Yankees have their best 4 starters out there.
And I think the best chance here for Fried is to get back on track in a game like this. I love the matchup of Warren versus Crochet. Warren's been pitching some of his best baseball of his career, obviously his young career, but really in this rookie campaign in this last 7-game stretch, as I highlighted earlier. And you have him going up against, you have a homegrown Yankee kid up against Crochet here, a guy who's trying to coin himself the next Yankee villain. And then even on Sunday Night Baseball, you have the best guy for the Yankees right now going in Rodon. You have May, a guy the Yankees were rumored to have coveted at the deadline and didn't come away with. So I think there's a lot of fun matchups in this. I agree with you. I don't think there's a true villain right now. Maybe it emerges this weekend. I also think you're talking about a new crop of Red Sox. This is a new Red Sox team, a young Red Sox team. Somebody can come in and prove that they're the Yankee killer this weekend. Somebody could come into this series this weekend and make themselves a villain in Yankee land. And I think that would be really fun. I hate to say it. I don't want to see somebody be a Yankee killer, but I want to see somebody piss the pinstripes off.
At least it's not Devers anymore.
No, and I want to see somebody tick the Yankees off a little bit. I want to see the fire. I don't want to see somebody get beamed, nobody get hurt, but I want to see some fire this weekend. It's in the Bronx. It's going to be a packed crowd, all 3 of the primetime games, and even on Saturday afternoon. I think this is going to be a big series in a lot of ways. I think this is going to be a highly watched series. I think this is going to be a kind of make or break series for this rivalry this season. This is going to be the series that I think really defines it because I think if one of these 2 teams pulls off 3 or 4, if one of these 2 teams sweeps it, I think it's going to be really, really exciting for one of the fan bases, not for the other, but I think it's really going to reignite things heading into Fenway too in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So I think there's a lot to like about this series this weekend. I'm really pumped for it. And like you've touched on, like I've touched on, I think this is going to be pretty indicative of the way the standings shake out over the next week or half, really next month or so as we get into the home stretch of the season. On your ticker below there, you see the standings as they are heading into tonight's action. Yankees are starting to reel in the Jays, and Red Sox still hot on their tails. I really do think this is kind of, as you mentioned, the Blue Jays are coming back down to earth, kind of crashing back down at the right time for the Yankees and Red Sox to have this series this weekend. I think it amplifies the drama of the series. It makes things all the more important because you might not be fighting for second in the American League East. You might be fighting for first in the American League East if the Jays continue the downhill slide. Top two teams in the wild card standing right now are the Yankees and the Red Sox, with the Mariners tied with the Sox heading into the weekend for the Red Sox. The Yankees have one more game left before this weekend series. Red Sox, Mariners, and then you have the Rays 2.5 games back of Seattle and Boston. Also have the Guardians 3 games back, and the Rangers 6 games back with a losing record. A lot of parity in this part of the American League this season. Milwaukee continues to be the best team in Major League Baseball and continue to be the most fun team in Major League Baseball. And hell, I'm loving the idea of a matchup between the power of friendship and the big bad Avenger Los Angeles Dodgers at some point this season, hopefully in the postseason on tap. Any parting thoughts before we round things out today? I think this is a really exciting series ahead that's going to be kind of a make or break time for the Bomber Boys too, because we spent a hell of a lot of time on realignment today. And I can tell you right now, if this series goes the other way for the Yankees this weekend, you're going to be in for a hell of a show next week.
You got to set the tone early. You need, Judge to homer in the first inning on Thursday, or Grisham, or whoever the heck it is. It doesn't matter who it is, but set the tone early and make them known that this isn't the team that you saw in June that you were able to win 5 of 6 against. This is the New York Yankees. This is the 2025 New York Yankees that we know are a better team than they were in June. Set the tone early. Maybe not hit someone if you're on the mound, but, maybe you do. Set the tone. Go inside with a fastball if you're healed. Don't hurt the guy, because obviously you don't root for anyone to get hurt. But certainly find a way to set the tone. Get the crowd into it. Do not let Boston take that energy out of Yankee Stadium. It's right before school starts in New York. You have the perfect opportunity. One last weekend that a lot of these kids are going to be free. Colleges are starting to go back. You have the perfect opportunity to max out Yankee Stadium, get that crowd into it early, and make Boston regret coming to New York this weekend. Although the MLB schedule worked out that way, Boston didn't really have the chance. Besides the point here, you get it. Set the tone early. And Dylan, you set the tone early too in your golf scramble that you skipped out on going to the stadium with me for.
I was just going to say, there's a good chance that Yankees fans, if you are at the stadium this weekend, you will see one Justin Chavalella. You will not see me. I will be in Hershey, Pennsylvania, playing in a golf outing. So I'm pumped with that. Don't excited.
Screw it up like you screwed ours up.
Follow us on Instagram and X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Bomber Boys Pod. Subscribe to our YouTube at Bomber Boys Podcast. Follow us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, Bomber Boys Podcast. Any final thoughts for you, Justin? I mean, I'd ask what you're up to this weekend, but you just tipped your hand. You're heading to the stadium. I'm heading to go play some golf, lose a lot of golf balls in all likelihood.
Sounds about right.
All right. For Justin Chavalella, I'm Dylan Price saying big weekend ahead. We're going to have a full recap of it next week. And if all things go south, hell, we might even have an emergency episode on Sunday. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, thanks for hanging with us here on Bomber Boys.